Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new episode of Mark Tech after almost a month. I know I usually apologize for my hiatuses, and this is definitely the case where I actually have to because no, I did not have any health issues, no family stuff or anything. Well, I did visit family, I did spend time with friends, I obviously had a lot of work stuff, but honestly, it has not been more chaotic than usual. I guess I just didn't feel like it during the holiday season, the New Year's, and but now I'm very energized. Now we are finally getting some real new news, some older rumors, but that ones that are finally getting back into reality, like some things that could actually come to market. I don't know, maybe by the end of the month. Even though it's not actually a rumor, it's more of a speculation on my part. I also see on my iPad that the stream is working. I hope audio and video quality is all right for you. I already see Riley back in the chat. Now, I don't expect probably anyone but Riley to be here because I know I fucked up for the algorithm. I know YouTube does not like when live streamers disappear for a freaking month. My live viewership has never been really high, but now it's probably gonna be god awful for at least a quarter. I'll try to make at least 2 streams per week, hopefully 3 actually. There isn't anything coming up right now that should prevent me from doing this. I'll keep you informed. But beyond all this, you guys know if you really want to get my more, let's say, non-stop commentary, I don't want to say superfluous, you go to my Discord. You'll find very nice people over there who really like discussing technology, Apple stuff, all that jazz. I'm not even sure because a new topic was just added while I was basically walking home from work. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do all the topics that I want, but I will probably have to put Panther Lake into like another stream, which we should have the time for now that I'm truly back. But I will do everything that you see in the thumbnail, of course, and in the title, plus whatever happened just now, which is Apple unveiling their own creator studio, which we have a full blog post actually written by Apple. In fact, Apple has actually commented on a multitude of their services in the last few days, some stuff that I would like to bring up quickly and basically like I guess just like refresh all our memories and see how far Apple services have come, which of them are worth it, which one might be not worth it, especially depending on your own specific use cases, whether we're talking professional or personal. Then, as I said, some speculation on my part about new products, but actually, I would like to start with what happened yesterday. And instead of trying to read an article for you, which I usually do and which I will do for some other topics today, MKBHD made a video about it. Now, I did not yet watch it, so there's no pre-watch accusations. You guys know I do like correcting Mr. Roots the Boss, MKBHD, even like Dave 2D, Just Josh. Whenever they do something wrong, Just Josh out of them, to be quite honest, though, is by far the best these days. Yeah, so if there's anything wrong that I find here, I'll comment on it. Obviously, this is a hot topic. This idea that Siri is now powered by Google. This is probably where I put my timestamp for this video. Given that given like this the subtitle for this part of the stream. But yeah, I find it fascinating. I find that there are a lot of uninformed opinions masquerading as analysis or fact about it on the internet. So I'll try to be as level-headed as I can. Small warning, I find this a positive development for everyone who wants Apple to be different in the AI space. If you don't want Apple to turn into another Microsoft or OpenAI or NVIDIA, and if you obviously wanted that from Apple, if you wanted Apple to write all their foundation models from the ground up, to do all their compute entirely from the ground up by themselves, this is not going to happen. It's the same thing that, like, you might like iCloud, but iCloud is running on Amazon Web Services or on Google Cloud. It's just adhering to Apple stuff. We'll see some of similarities between that strategy that Apple has deployed for a multitude of services in the past, where they run on other servers than Apple's. But there will also be some stuff where it's more similar to how Apple used to license the actual, like, off-the-shelf ARM CPU core design versus how they then license the actual instruction set these days, or how Apple used to buy GPU architecture directly from Power VR, now does it themselves. I think we'll see similar developments for how Apple treats foundation models. By the way, foundation models, I've seen some misunderstandings about that. Foundation models is basically Apple's term for LLMs, or large language models, but because large language models is not a term that's applicable for everything, because obviously you also have AI models focused on servers and on photos and videos and stuff like that, right? What you get from there, those are called multimodal models. At least that's what OpenAI and Google use for ChatGPT and Gemini, and Apple just uses the term as foundation models. It's the same way that they describe VR as spatial computing, right? They like their own terms. Another good example of that is how Apple doesn't like the term motherboard. Instead, they prefer the term logic board. But those are interchangeable terms that have their counterparts in industry standards. Seems like my stream is working. Let's get started.
So, the headline is that the big Siri update we've all been waiting for is finally going to become.
So, some context, again, no pre-watch here. He'll probably mention it. According to Mark Gurman and other sources like that, we are getting the new Siri probably somewhere around April-ish. Could be a little earlier, especially for the beta of 26.4. We are already on the second beta of 26.3. So that means by mid-February, end of February, 26.3 should be over or finalized. And then we should be pretty quickly transitioning to the first betas of 26.4. Whether or not those betas will actually have the AI features already, or those will come in later once we are much closer to the official version, that's something that did happen with iOS 18 betas, for example. That remains to be seen. My speculation is that we'll only see the new AI features actually baked into the beta, very close to the official release. Maybe one or two of those could come already in the first 26.4 beta, like early March or something like that, but I wouldn't bet on it, really.
Coming in 2026, and it will be powered by Google. Now,
yes, yeah, mostly, yes.
We knew this was coming. This was a rumor for a while. We've talked about it in the past.
Yeah.
Apple,
I believe, like, last October is the first time we've heard of it.
Continued for the last couple of months to just spin their wheels, and Siri continued to suck. I made a video.
I still disagree that Siri sucks. I think Siri is not a chatbot, and I think Siri has bugs that absolutely need to be fixed. However, I think the kind of things that Siri does that have always been advertised with Siri, which is timers, calendar events, reminders, I think that, to me, has worked very well. I tried recently some more complex, like dictating even to my Mac. English is my third language, even though I do handle it pretty well, and it recognized everything perfectly. So, yeah. I have no complaints, honestly, when it comes to basic Siri. I understand a lot of people want way more out of it. My complaints is that there are some things that Apple does try to push with Siri that I think still are not managed too well. I think especially when it comes to follow-up requests, Siri is still too dumb even for a non-LLM based assistant. Like Google Assistant, even before generative AI, was better at these tasks. But especially for everything that's computed right on device, it's really fast, it's private, it's secure, it's handled on obviously dedicated hardware through the Apple Neural Engine. And it works really well for all the tasks I do with Siri day to day, the kind of things that, for example, I scream at my HomePod ad sometimes.
So about 9 months ago about the state of Apple's AI crisis, basically.
Again, yeah, there was never a crisis. Apple was the only crisis really that happened here is the fact that Apple pre-announced a little bit too early. There was basically one misleading ad that kind of suggested that more AI features were available for Siri than they already actually had been released. That's the ad with Bella Ramsey. Yeah, I know, Riley. You are not here necessarily for AI news, but this is a pretty big one. I mean, fucking Elon Musk commented on it and complained that it's too much consolidation of power, that it gives Google too much control, which shows that he has no understanding of what's actually happening. As per usual, we'll get to some other software news when it comes to Apple, and then we'll get to a little bit of hardware speculation right in the end. As I alluded to early in the stream, I probably won't have time to comment much on things like Panther Lake, AMD and NVIDIA announcements, because especially the last topic has been an absolute nightmare for me this year. I mean, it is this year, but like CES from AMD and NVIDIA was just an absolute shit show. Like they were showing off like multi-million-dollar hardware that goes into multi-billion-dollar servers. During the Consumer Electronics Show, at least Intel had a decent SoC announced, which is the Panther Lake family. There's still some things about Panther Lake that I really want to understand. For example, we don't yet have much CPU data on it. The only thing we know is that it's clocked a little bit lower than the last generation. Nothing that wouldn't be overcomable with better IPC, of course, and hopefully it means it's very efficient now that it's on Intel's own 18A node. The GPU seems pretty good, but we do have a very incomprehensive picture for now. Riley saying they were showing some nice battery tech. Yeah, I'm not saying the CES was entirely bad. Like there was like this Norwegian or Swedish firm that showed solid state batteries. Right around that time, BYD actually said that they are going into mass production for their sodium ion batteries. So basically replacing lithium with salt, which is obviously, you can imagine, much cheaper, much more logistically and environmentally positive. So there's a lot happening. I think there's been also some other European company doing some battery tech that's interesting. It's definitely fascinating in terms of technology. Like even AMD, they basically pre-announced Zen 6, right, and promised that they will basically jump to 2 nanometer. And NVIDIA announced Vera Rubin, which is going to be the architectural backbone for the new GPU stuff. But they only announced that stuff for servers, not for actual consumers.
And not a whole lot has changed since then. You should go watch that video. It's linked below. It's basically a much more in-depth.
Yeah, like solid state batteries. They've been promised to us for decades at this point. I think semi-solid state is probably where technology might move to, where one of the electrodes might be solid, the other might be liquid. I know that the liquid is actually in between those, but the way that the electrons actually reach them might be different between the cathode and the anode. It's honestly hard to say. Yeah, sodium is not going to be exciting for us as like Mac or iPad or iPhone users because it will have a lower density than lithium-ion batteries. Especially now that we have like newer generations of that, like silicon carbon and stuff like that. But especially for electric vehicles, and especially for electric vehicles where like you might just use it in the city, or maybe you live somewhere where you travel long distances, and for that you already have a hybrid. But in a hybrid you want the battery to be as light as possible, right? And you probably don't even need that much more than like 15-20 watt hour, not watt hour, kilowatt hour. So yeah, there is a lot that's happening.
Analysis of all of Apple's AI stuff. But this update, this headline, is basically now Apple and Google putting out statements confirming the hilarious news that Apple hasn't finally figured out AI. They will be partnering with a company who has figured out AI. So here's the official.
Again, I do find all of these takes kind of fascinating, given that now it is a rightful jab at Apple because they did promise to do their stuff in-house. I'm not denying that. But if you think back to like Apple's initial partnership with Google, by the time when Eric Schmidt was actually on Apple's board of directors, like Apple was making first-party YouTube apps that came pre-shipped on your iPhone and iPad, right? They were part of the iconography of iOS back in the day, even iPhone OS before the renaming to iOS. Apple integrated, obviously, Google Search into Safari. When Apple like hilariously bombed with Ping as a social media service, Apple pivoted to integrating Twitter and Facebook sharing directly in the system, basically cementing for all time that Apple will never do a social media business endeavor ever again. Like Google has, like, do you remember Google Plus? Right? Do you remember like the like mountain high Google graveyard like body pile that's on there? By the way, cute touch to have to read this from a OnePlus, but very clearly have an 17 Pro Max in orange over there. That's very interesting positioning in the room. Also, there's some orange here. We have a very colorful background here on his MacBook, and then we have very colorful pencils in this bowl. The only thing that feels a tiny bit out of touch is the dark and green jacket. Yeah, it's a very interesting composition for the room. Somebody made it with talent, what I'm trying to say.
Quote from Apple. After careful evaluation, we've determined that Google's technology provides the
small note to Apple, don't use something like foundation for Apple foundation models. Say something like basis, right? Or core. Foundation for foundation models sounds like you have a very, like, I don't know, like a poor selection of words.
most capable foundation for Apple foundation models, and we're excited about the innovative new experiences it will unlock for our users. Pretty classic vanilla statement from Apple, but this is still
What? Like, what? Like, I don't get it. Like, this is a classic statement for every company in the world. Like, no company is gonna, like, say, we have decided our tech is trash, so we have taken something better. They're just gonna say, we found something that's cool, here it is, and here are the benefits you're gonna have. Guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, please like the stream, please subscribe, share the video out with anybody who you think might enjoy it, and comment. You guys know I love interacting with a lively live chat, getting your agreements, your disagreements. Sorry, I made myself a little bit smaller so I don't intrude as much on Marquez's handsomeness as I did before.
really interesting for a couple of reasons. I have questions that don't have answers yet that we probably won't get the answers to.
Yeah, not officially. Well, probably, I hope he asks these questions because I do want to speculate about them. But we'll probably get some details through the likes of Ming-Chi Kuo, again, Mark Gurman, some other internal sources. Let's see if he actually nails the questions we need to be asking.
Until Apple's WWDC event?
Nah, there are some internal questions here that I think Apple will just not address at all. Like they'll say they are partnered with Google, but I think for everything else, they'll just leave it up to the imagination of people. Like, where do they use a Google model? Where do they use an Apple Foundation model? Where do they use an Apple Foundation model that's basically a highly tweaked Google Foundation model? Do they sometimes switch back and forth between those? What is running on private cloud compute? What might be actually running on basically Google's own cloud? What is running on Apple Silicon? What might be running on Google's own TPUs? There's a lot that we'll eventually have to kind of like hack our way through to understand.
In June, which is likely when they'll formally announce this new revamped Siri?
No. So this is already poorly informed by every means that we understand. Siri is still part of iOS 26. Don't forget, if they were to announce it at WWDC, that would mean it's actually a September release for iOS 27. That's not going to happen. Now, they could announce it at WWDC, put out an iOS 26.6 or 0.7 at that point, right? And then basically needlessly transition to iOS 27. That's pointless. If they don't, like, in my opinion, they need to release Siri in the first half of this year. Now, it could be a little bit later than April. It could be closer to May. But we have seen very meaningful announcements in May before. Like, Apple in the past released the Apple Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro, and with it, cursor support into iPadOS in basically like a May-June release, so outside of WWDC.
Again. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But also just, wow, this is a pretty big news story just because it is a $4 trillion tech company.
It's two $4 trillion tech company. Google just turned $4 trillion, 4.1 now. Apple just lost their status as a $4 trillion company. They're now at like 3.85. What's interesting is that Microsoft actually dropped hard from like being 4.1 and stuff like that to now 3.5. And then, of course, the number one company when it comes to stock evaluation right now is NVIDIA at $4.5 to $4.6 trillion.
That everyone assumes is on the bleeding edge of all this stuff, and we're waiting for them to get it together and finally jump in the AI race.
Okay, so
and now this feels like the headline that we can all point to say, okay, yeah, they're losing the AI race. And
okay, so this is a complete misunderstanding of the situation already. Like, this is Apple using AI as a commodity. Is Apple gonna be the company that designs artificial general intelligence, like AGI? That goal, by the way, that every AI company has been targeting last year, and now this year, companies like Anthropic have come out and said, maybe AGI is not even the goal we should be pursuing. And Sam Altman said like a month or two ago, said like, oh, maybe AGI has been reached internally during some testing or whatever, but like, what? So don't fucking release it then. So there is no, I should note, there is no AI race for Apple. Never has been. Siri was not supposed to turn into a chatbot. At no point in time. Greg Josvia confirmed that. Craig Federighi confirmed that. Tim Cook confirmed that. Apple might have changed their mind in the future about it, but that there have been speculation that they at least tested out some chatbot-like functionality for Siri. Obviously, if you kind of force their foundation model that you can access through private cloud compute already, you can kind of force it to be more generalized and therefore more chatbot-y. But Apple does not want to handle the incredible stress right now that, for one, comes with building those kinds of servers. It would hurt their environmental goals strongly. Right now, there isn't even, there is a question of how much capacity there even is at this point, because Microsoft obviously has booked out a lot of NVIDIA hardware. Sam Altman has pre-booked like 40% of the world's RAM. which is fucking ridiculous. The fact that this is even legal is honestly so stupid. We have Rosa joining the chat. Hi, some familiar faces coming back. At least I'm not fully alone as I expected. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, Apple was never in the AI race in that same way. Like Apple never invested the money for it, and Apple never advertised features that were like more chatbotty and stuff like that. So that's already a miss on Marquez's side. So that's two misses. Now that one is a little bit more of an opinion, but before that he pretty much missed with the timeline prediction.
Honestly, I don't blame him. It's hard to tell if that's exactly what's happened at this very moment, but that's how it feels. But you know what? If you're Apple and you've been spinning your wheels this entire time working on Siri, but Siri's just been bad this whole...
Okay, so this is also wrong. Apple did, like, the problem is because Apple will now not release a Siri that's entirely Apple LLM based for years potentially, right? This partnership is years long, so it could take Apple 5 or even 10 years of thinking, oh, maybe we should switch to our own foundation model at some point. People will also not feel the customizations that Apple, of course, puts on top of Google's foundation model, and of course the actual Siri integration in the system. The fact that obviously you need to have APIs for all this, you need to have a system that's actually like that can communicate with Siri. It's not just about Siri understanding your query. It's actually your system allowing that Siri to complete that task. But it's the same thing that we always get with like Samsung screens or Sony sensors, right? Whenever there is a big improvement or a big change in underlying technology, people are like, oh, Apple is just buying a component of the shelf and claiming it as their own innovation, right? There's just been a report about TSMC and Apple, for example, that Apple is not just an early customer of TSMC, but Apple has hundreds of engineers over at TSMC. They're basically learning the new node, helping with its development, giving TSMC basically suggestions of how to make it perfect for a more Apple special thing. If you ever wonder why a new node might actually be more efficient, even outside of obvious architectural differences, on Apple than on another device, it's because Apple builds its chips for a new node, and in a way, that new node was built for Apple's chips. Only now is Apple's influence on TSMC waning a little bit because NVIDIA just overtook them as the biggest purchaser of dies. All of what I'm trying to say is Apple does customize the hardware they get. Some hardware is so simple, there's probably not much customization you can do at that point, but like this idea that Apple just grabs parts of the shelf, in this case a foundation model, and just crams it into their device, calls it a day, and that's it. This is a huge misunderstanding of the actual situation, and I hope that Apple actually, maybe not even for 26.4, but maybe if they come back to the largest stage possible, WWDC in June, that they come out and comment, guys, this is a system that's customized with Apple know-how, Apple data, by the way, whatever little data that Apple collects, it still is specific iOS data, something that Google does not have. It's now baked into the system. It's potentially rewritten to be more optimally running on Apple Silicon. Like, we might have even created two versions of the same model, one slightly more optimized for Google's TPUs, some more for Apple Silicon. I want those kinds of details, but knowing Apple, they probably won't do it.
Whole time, and it's famously taken you longer than you thought to deliver the features from the ads.
I've already criticized Apple for the way the delay happened. Again, like, as somebody who follows gaming news, for example, like GTA 6, there might be another delay. GTA 6 has already been delayed twice. It's already taken way longer, even for its initial release date, than people expected. Now it might get a third delay, and could be like another year and a half away, not just 9 months or something like that. what I'm trying to say is I'm not against the delay, and that's why I didn't punish Apple for the delay itself, but the way the delay happened, the way it came very impromptu, the way it very much came after some misleading advertisement, that was what I was criticizing.
Had to delete, then this move makes perfect sense, as hilarious as it is. Like, this is not the first time Google and Apple have worked together.
Good.
Famously, Google's paid Apple billions of dollars over the years to be the default search engine in Safari.
Plus YouTube integration way back in the day, plus Google Maps integration right into iOS, by the way. So there were two basically first-party takes on Google services right inside iOS in the past. And then Apple eventually transitioned away from it to the point where right now Apple Maps here in Berlin, where I live in Germany, to me, it's actually now better than Google Maps. Yes, and this is why I always try to comment that some people are like, oh, the Apple of the past. The last time Apple tried to transition too quickly was with iOS 6, by the way, like with Apple Maps. That's what led to the dismissal of Scott Forstall. And that was Apple switching away from a Google service to their own. Now with AI, Apple tried to build their own Google-like service from day one, but they failed. Now they are relying on a Google service, not service, the underlying technology. And guess what? Over time, they messed up the transition, but then fully regrouped. Now Apple Maps is as good, in some ways better than Google Maps. In some ways it's worse. I do still acknowledge that there's overall more data, especially for third world countries and the Middle East and stuff like that. But when it comes to Western countries, America, Europe, when it comes to more affluent countries, China, Japan, South Korea, this is where Apple Maps not just keeps up with Google Maps, but usually even surpasses it from what I've
Obviously,
heard.
Apple doesn't make a search engine, but their users use search engines and need one. So they made a partnership to bring them the best one available. There's some arguments, obviously, and some antitrust stuff in the background, but basically...
this is, by the way, the one deal. I have said time and time again that I do not consider the App Store a monopoly. I do not consider Apple's pricing exploitative. I think some of it is high because Apple can afford to make it high, like RAM and storage, usually because their base configurations are actually kind of great. And then asking 30 or 15% from developers on the App Store. I've said why I think it makes sense, why I think it could be lower, but it's still mostly in line with industry standards, and why I, as a customer, don't want iOS to transition to a Windows-like or even macOS-like model with just free software downloads, and by free I mean open, from anywhere you want. I've said time and time again that I prefer iOS to be more closed off and secure, to be more curated and more pure in a way. Oh, that rhymed. Nice. But yeah, and the same goes for services. Sometimes Apple will do their own thing. Like Apple Podcasts, for example. For years, people asked, well, why doesn't Apple build out Apple Podcasts, which by all accounts is pretty great, into a full-on YouTube competitor? And the reason is that YouTube exists. And if you are first, you get a lot of benefits from that. You are pretty much the only guy now who can be profitable. This is what happened with Netflix in a way. It took Disney buying stuff like Fox and consolidating so much power underneath themselves to make Disney Plus actually relevant. And still they have fewer subscribers than Netflix, which by all accounts does not have Star Wars, it does not have Pixar, it does not have these iconic brands like Marvel, right? And still Netflix has more subscribers, generates more profit than Disney Plus. And this is why Apple Podcasts is not turning into YouTube. This is why Spotlight Search, Siri Search is not becoming a Google search alternative. And this is why, no matter how Apple's development plays out in the AI race, Siri will never become the same kind of chatbot as OpenAI's ChatGPT, as Google's Gemini, because this like requires a level of investment in cloud compute, in LLM data collection and training that Apple simply cannot do unless they change their focus as a company. Google can do that because they've already had Google Cloud, because they've always been an online services company. Microsoft can do it because they have had years-long investments with Azure. And by the way, notice how nobody talks about the fact that Microsoft has no customer-facing good foundation models, by the way. Microsoft uses ChatGPT, and Microsoft actually still builds their own foundation models. They're just not good enough. Now it happens to Apple, a company that didn't sell its soul to market itself as the AI leader of the industry, the way that Satya Nadella did. And Apple is getting the backlash because it's so much sexier to talk about Apple and both their successes and their failures than anything related to Microsoft.
Deliver the best one available to their users. Now, in this case, it's probably Apple paying Google. I mean, we don't know the terms of the deal. There's been some rumors floating out there. But it's kind of along the same lines otherwise. Like, okay, Siri exists.
He didn't mention the number, but that number was $1 billion annually. It's a multi-year contract, so it stands to reason that the number will increase from year to year, especially as if Google commits to giving them newer and better models on like a quarterly or semi-annual basis or annual basis at the very least. So it could be something like 1 trillion this year, 1.2 trillion next year, 1.5 trillion the year after that. That's also in line with the increases that Google pays in terms of money to Apple, because those are proportional to the number of engagement that Google sees from Safari and their default search engine deal, right? And don't forget, Apple this quarter just grew 10%, way faster than the rest of the smartphone market. By all accounts, more and more traffic, Google traffic, will be going through Safari, and that's something that Google is paying for.
But it's really bad, and they want to give their users the best experience. They've worked on it really hard.
Again, we do not know how bad it is. There are standards, like the last thing we've heard from Mark Gurman was that the internal version of Siri that they've been working on was roughly 2/3 accurate. That was months and months and months ago. So, and the information might have been even older than that. So by all accounts, I would assume Apple has improved their models, especially the ones that were designed to run on device. But I also think that Apple realized that they will have to do way more through the cloud than they initially thought. And that requires much larger models. For example, the parameter amount for the Google Gemini 3 model that they're supposedly licensing is over 1 trillion, supposedly 1.2 trillion parameters, right? This cannot run on anything other than the M3 Ultra Max Studio when it comes to Apple's own hardware. And even that, it would still be very slow. So yeah, Apple will have to augment whatever small LLMs they have, some of their own, some of Google's, some a mix of them, and they will have to basically push it. They'll have to push the servers more with Google technology, because from everything we understand, Apple does not have over 1 trillion parameter models of their own, at least right now. I'm sure they might have one, but that one probably isn't good because that wasn't their development focus.
And get it up to a level to compete. So a partnership was the right answer, and it was just a judgment call to use Google's models as a foundation. Now, this is news to a lot of people because of them choosing Google for these models instead of any of the other competitors, say ChatGPT or OpenAI's models.
Yeah, but that's also the point. He kind of almost answered his own question, or at least his speculation. There is not much competition, to be quite honest. When it comes to actually viable tech that you could push into AI Siri tomorrow, there are only two companies. That's Google Gemini with Gemini 3 And that's ChatGPT with ChatGPT 5, and that's OpenAI with ChatGPT 5.2. These are the only ones that when it comes to the thing that Apple needs. I know there is Claude from Anthropic. I know that Meta obviously does their Llama stuff. I know all that. But when it comes to companies who also have server infrastructure, in Google's case, a company that might have actually built their models very much to be running on like ARM hardware and like SoC, TPU like designs, like there isn't that much. Like there are some open weight models. They're probably going to use something from Alibaba or from DeepSeek. We don't know which one is better when they bring AI Siri to China, because they definitely cannot do that with a Google model or even an Apple in-house model for the most part. So yeah, like whenever he says, "Oh, and other companies," no, it's either Google with Gemini or OpenAI with ChatGPT. Now, a lot of people thought it could be ChatGPT because Apple has already partnered with ChatGPT, and that's why more complex queries that you ask Siri right now, they will be handled by ChatGPT. You can even subscribe to a more premium plan for ChatGPT, basically right in the settings app, because ChatGPT is so deeply integrated into the current version of Siri. It stands to reason that you will also probably be able to subscribe to a more premium version of Gemini right in the settings app. Basically, they would work like whatever you prefer them to be. And we know that that kind of integration works because apps like Perplexity allow you to dynamically address either one or the other, and even use others like Claude. I use Perplexity because I was given a free year of Perplexity Plus or Pro, whatever the 20 euro version is, from my PayPal account. So that was nice. Yeah, so long story short, even though it's definitely not short the way I'm rambling, we are almost 45 minutes into the stream. Yeah, there isn't actually that much alternative to Google or ChatGPT.
To me, it's most interesting because they recently made a big partnership with OpenAI. Siri, as you know now, will kick out to ChatGPT for any complex
You see, I
request
did
that is
not
too
do a
much for Siri
pre-watch.
to
Otherwise, I
handle,
would
stuff
have
that
let him
needs
handle that.
world knowledge or has a multi-step request or whatever it is. But assuming this new Google Foundation beefs up Siri and will allow it to do all this stuff on its own, it won't need to kick out to ChatGPT anymore.
Again, this is a profound misunderstanding. This is the Gemini model. It will not have the cloud compute to kick you out into a chat. Well, it will have the compute to kick you out, but it will not have the compute to give you like regular chatbot answers, and it will not be programmed to do so. That's not what Apple's infrastructure is going to be built for. That's not what their push for the new Siri is going to be.
So what happens to that OpenAI partnership? I don't know.
It's supposedly currently unchanged. That's the last piece of news we got recently.
Anyway, now the promise is officially official. Again, they will be coming out at some point during 2026 with the big Siri update powered by...
It's not just Siri. It's using Google's foundation models. Things like cleanup. If they might be handled entirely on device, they might now get a cloud compute portion that is might handle more complex versions. Text prediction when typing could have augmentations through a Google Foundation model. Like there is so much stuff. Visual intelligence might get its own like Google model where you don't actually have to ask Google or ChatGPT, where it just does it automatically. This is the benefit here. It's not that it's a chatbot that's just replacing Siri.
By Google's models. And it'll be interesting to see them. I assume this is going to happen at WWDC 2026, which is, I think now that's 2 years after they originally announced the big Siri update. But here's what's on my mind now. One, how good will this partnership make the new Siri actually? I tend to think pretty good. I think Gemini on Android phones is already really good. They've looped in now a lot of the old Google Assistant features. So Gemini as a product.
Okay, so this has absolutely nothing to do with it. The assistant features. Again, do you actually think that the model is not even the feature set? The model is just the foundation for how it recognizes you and how good it is at accessing like your other stuff. Like the way that APIs are written for app control or like analyzing what's on your screen, the fact that it even has that kind of access, all of that is coded in software. It's not part of the model.
Is really good. The models are really good. Google asserts it's the best.
It's not. Gemini 3 is pretty good, but it's now behind ChatGPT 5.2.
It's kind of like this. There's always, GPT and Claude, Anthropic, all that stuff. But I'd say it's comfortably top 3. But then 2,
that's fair.
How much will Apple be building on top of these foundation models? The foundation models give Siri a better, deeper understanding of what you're asking and better smarts and all of that. But then there's all the stuff that Apple would like to do on top of that. But when they customize it and add features and capabilities of their own, there's no doubt there will be a big privacy focus.
Isn't it funny that we're almost 5 minutes into it and this crucial context of Apple's customization and integration of this, again, customization is a very important part here too, because obviously integration, like without integration, it just wouldn't work. Like it just would be an LLM that you load on your device and does nothing. But the customization part is also very important. Well, we acknowledge that Apple usually customizes the technology they buy. Even a more off-the-shelf Samsung screen will be customized by Apple, whether it's just through the display controller on the device, which usually is much more advanced than what even Samsung themselves will use. It's much more efficient. It's better at handling underlying technologies like VRR. Obviously, there's actual integration into the device, like how well is that screen cooled and stuff like that. But then there are also custom orders from Apple that might not happen the same way without Apple. Like when the iPhone X was released and Apple curved the screen underneath itself so they could connect the display controller internally rather than at the very edge. And this resulted in symmetrical bezels on the iPhone X. So something that was very important to Apple. This is how Apple operates.
With Apple, and when they added the ChatGPT integration, where it actually kicked out to ChatGPT to get stuff back, they did a lot of work to preserve user privacy in that.
Yeah,
using
correct.
the Google Foundation models does not inherently mean it's going to be kicking stuff out to Google. It's got the models on the device. But still, it'll be interesting to see how they customize the functionality on top of what Google's stuff will do. Like, remember that weird kind of half circle to search that's built into Apple Intelligence on the iPhone, where you take a screenshot and then highlight what you want, and then it lets you just basically Google image search whatever you circled? What if the
you can do way more. You can also kick it out to ChatGPT to actually analyze what you're seeing.
iPhone gets full-on, real Android-grade circle to search now. Circle to search is one of the absolute most useful.
So that's actually interesting because that actually agrees a good speculation, because there is a difference between just the model and even its integration into the OS and how apps, including Siri, if you want to look at this as an app, handle all that. And supposedly, we don't know if that's necessarily a 26.4 or an iOS 27 change, but supposedly Siri is getting a redesign. My assumption is that redesign will primarily focus on giving you better control over like your search query history and stuff like that. Handling things like screenshot or screen analysis in general, that's something that needs a more persistent AI, in my opinion, not just something that comes and goes. So this is very
AI
good
features to
speculation
me
on Marques's part.
Of the entire last 5+ years, where you can circle whatever's on your screen, search text, or circle an image to get a search for that image, or get more info on locations or a sign you took a picture of or whatever else. If all of that is potentially coming to the iPhone, that would be a pretty nice outcome of this deal.
Which is funny because right now here he basically got Google search.
But then my final thought is, all these headlines are obviously hilarious with like, oh, Apple's such a rich, powerful company and they can't somehow get their AI stuff.
I love when people say like, "Oh, because somebody is rich, they can do anything they want." That has never been true. This is why, like that video, right? That famous Apple keynote video that said there are 1,000 no's for every yes. This is what prevents Apple from having a Google-like graveyard of features. This is what prevents Apple from more regularly being like the laughingstock in the news because something was severely delayed or even canceled. Now with AI, because of the hype, I would even argue the bubble when it comes to some of the financial implications of it, Apple kind of took the bait and they pre-announced stuff too early. I think if they had announced everything last year and it would have taken even up until the end of this year, I think we would be in a much better position where even using Google wouldn't be such a bad deal. But because it was all part initially of iOS 18, then iOS 18.1, 0.2, 0.3, so much stuff was spread out until it was eventually delayed. This is what created that bad opinion of Apple. But again, in an industry where like Rockstar has 6,000 employees working on GTA 6, and that game is still taking 13 years after GTA 5, even like 8 years after Red Dead Redemption 2. Like, delays happen. And this idea that, like, honestly, I don't find any of this so hilarious. Like, whenever like Google has to delay something, I never find that hilarious or whatever. But yeah, I never believe that Apple's money gives them the ability to do anything they want. I think this is a big misconception, including by people like Elon Musk, who recently gave an interview and said, "Oh, I want to do better 2-nanometer production than TSMC. I'm gonna make a clean room where I can like smoke weed and eat a cheeseburger." And I'm like, bro, shut up. You're like, you haven't even built 200 nanometer, much less 20 nanometer, much less 2 fucking nanometer. Like, who the fuck are you to now come out and claim you can build like a complete revolution of clean rooms versus TSMC, who has been doing all of this for decades?
Together, so they're going to partner with another company to do it. Fine. But it's also popped this thought into my head that maybe who owns the models is not as important as who controls the interface. Like, for example,
I mean, we have seen multiple examples of this time and time again. Is ARM the richest company on the earth? Because Apple uses ARM CPUs and Google and Samsung and Qualcomm. No, they make a licensing deal where some people buy like full-on core designs while other buy the underlying instruction set. Obviously, they cannot ask infinite amounts of money because then people would transition to x86 or to RISC-V. So yeah. Is TSMC the richest company on the earth? I mean, they make all the technology that's in Apple, that's in Google, that's in NVIDIA, AMD, right? No, because it's an underlying technology. It's not the actual packaged product. And yeah, I agree with Marques here.
A tool that I've talked about in the past, actually, on my Mac called Raycast. And it's awesome. If you haven't heard of it, it's basically like a Spotlight search replacement for Mac because Spotlight has also been dog water for years.
It has, like, people just don't understand that Spotlight needs a little bit of buffering and then it's all good. And I don't mean like buffering, it needs time. I mean like it needs to analyze the data on your device. And Apple is usually very finicky about when they do that because they don't want to like force the device to waste too many resources on it. Spotlight search has been working completely fine for me for years and years. I know there have been bugs with it, but I've never encountered them. Just like I've never encountered that like search doesn't work in the settings app bug. That's why, like, I can say that maybe these features have some bugs, But what I hate is calling them like dog water, especially if you use this and probably never look back, never actually test Spotlight search. How would you even know?
So it replaces Spotlight search for me, lets me find files, and also do translations and conversions and window
You can do all that in Spotlight search, especially conversions.
management and all this stuff. And they recently
I mean, I'm gonna briefly, because Spotlight search has the tendency to show private information on top, like my last used files, $12 to euro. Okay. The rest is pointless wiki information, but I can actually make myself smaller again if I return it. Yep, it all works. Good. So let me make myself a little bit smaller again. And here's Spotlight search. $12 to euro. Worked instantaneously, gave me some superfluous web results, whatever, and some text files. But yeah, because God knows what they might have there. But yeah, this is why I'm saying some people just have meme-like understandings of these features. Not saying that Spotlight search is perfect, but it's definitely not freaking dog water. Strive 57X, my only gripe are the slow loadings icons in macOS 26. Please elaborate on that, because this is actually, you'll probably be a good candidate for our Discord, Strive, because there are plenty of people who hate Tahoe, macOS 26 in there. There are some people who love it. I'm more on the loving side. What part of it is slow loading? Because when you're saying icons, do you mean like the apps load slowly? Or do you mean it's in Spotlight search? Because I love getting actual feedback. I don't want to like live in my own bubble just because I'm not experiencing some bugs and issues, and maybe my M1 Max MacBook Pro handles this stuff better. Like, I do admit that a lot of this stuff is probably dog water on like Intel Macs at this point. So I would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining, by the way.
We added a feature which also lets you chat with an AI model if you need to answer a quick question for you. And inside of the Raycast settings, there's actually a drop-down slider. This is the Pro version, but there's literally a slider that lets you pick any of these AI models to chat with anytime you need to use an LLM as a tool. Could be ChatGPT, any of these models. Could be Gemini. Could be Grok if you're into that. Could be anything. At the end of the day, though, it doesn't really matter which model I'm choosing to use. I'm just picking the one that I think works best for me. But the interface that I use to interact with that is still
macOS.
Raycast. So Raycast gets the user.
But you still use macOS, right? And the technologies that you're using still matter. The more precise one, obviously, Raycast, is data that Apple could have on you through Spotlight search usage that they will lose. But for example, the LLMs that you're accessing through Raycast, that's something that if it's an online model, right, that one will have to be licensed. So that it still matters, but I understand Marquez's point. He's not wrong here. Strive, you're saying that the icons themselves, I assume now you're talking about 26. Render slower than older versions of macOS. I believe it's related to the new icon style customization, and you're using an M4 Pro, so your hardware definitely is ahead of mine. It's interesting. I've never had that. I am already on macOS 26.3 at this point, beta 2 as of last night. So maybe you should try reinstalling it. Like, it seems like it's working fine for me, but yeah, interesting.
Because they're delivering the experiences and function that I need. Apple is going to do this deal because it keeps the user on the iPhone.
Correct.
And so if built-in AI tools and LLMs was
it
really...
also keeps users out of extra apps. Like in this case, you showed Raycast, right? But this one, it takes people out of the ChatGPT app or the Google Gemini app or Perplexity, right? Now you're suddenly using Siri again. Or you're using an Apple AI feature inside an Apple app. We are later going to talk about how Apple is integrating AI in a way that I prefer the most. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of chatbots, even though I fully acknowledge they have their usage. But I think app-specific AI integration is where it's going to be at. It's going to be the best thing, in my opinion. We're going to talk a little bit later how Apple is doing that throughout a multitude of their services. But yeah, it keeps you, whether it's just the ecosystem, the specific device, the broader operating system, or even a specific service or app at that point. Strive saying usually happens when you summon Spotlight and start scrolling. Oh, that I've actually had a lot in 26.1. Okay, so you're not talking specifically about the icons. You're talking about like the app loading. Yeah, that I fully had. In fact, the Games app, specifically that new app, that one was dog water slow in 26.1. So I'm not sure, like, I assume it. So this was probably a software bug. I blamed it a little bit early on, and like my Mac being not the newest anymore, especially when it comes to CPU, it still shouldn't stutter and like struggle to load a list of apps. But that was early on. 26.2 fixed that for me for the most part. The Games app still could be faster, but I think the Spotlight search stuff is faster. I assume you mean like when you're doing it through here, right? Through the app stuff, which is now basically Spotlight search. It's basically a replacement for the Launchpad previously. Yes, I really hope that 26.2, which is the official version right now, but if you're willing to play with betas, 26.3 has been really positive for that for me.
One of the reasons you were actually going to leave the iPhone, you were going to switch to Android, to a Pixel or a Samsung phone or whatever it is, this move is specifically to make sure that that is no longer one of the reasons that you would switch. The fact that they can get as many of those features and experiences as possible to match with what's happening on Android phones is hopefully to Apple a win for them. And then they get the PR boost of, oh, Siri's good again, hopefully. I am curious though for y'all watching this, you people who are subscribed to a tech channel on YouTube and watching a new video about
Marquez,
Gemini and Siri, how much do these LLMs actually matter to you when making a tech purchase for yourself,
Not at
like
all.
your next phone?
In fact, we know from the 10% growth, I think this is a good transition to a topic that I actually don't think I've preloaded in Safari, but I think that's worth talking about. iPhone 10% growth. Oh my God, I'm just burdening myself with so much stuff because I'm already 1 hour into the stream. Yeah, Mac rumors, why not? So Apple tops 2025 smartphone market with 20% share and 10% annual growth. That's specifically to the strength of the iPhone 17 series, particularly the iPhone 17 devices, right? The Air did not perform too well, but don't forget, the Air is not actually called iPhone 17 Air. So we're talking about the base 17 and the Pro and the Pro Max. Especially the base model has really outperformed all expectations, and the Pros are very much replicating the usual success that we see from the Pro series. So while the percentages have shifted a little, it does not actually mean that the Pros have become less successful. That also makes Apple now the largest smartphone shipment company in the world. I honestly did not expect Apple to pretty much ever overtake Samsung at this point, unless Samsung like really fumbled it. I also never expected Apple to get back to 20% market share. Like, this is something that Apple hasn't reached for years, because Apple does not target those $200, $300, even $400 device price points that generate so much shipment volume, right? Apple fundamentally is focused on the more premium market. Their cheapest device is the iPhone 16e, and that it's probably competing with the iPhone Air when it comes to lowest value in the Apple ecosystem, and that's $600 starting price, right? Their good iPhones, I would argue, start at $800 and $1,100 respectively. So the fact that obviously also means that while Apple has 20% market share, Apple's share of the overall revenue of the smartphone market is way larger than that, and Apple's share of the profits of the smartphone market is probably way over 50% currently. So Apple is very, very successful smartphone business right now. We are also seeing that the Mac is growing pretty well. Now, the Mac growth has been a little bit dwarfed by the PC market in the last quarter, and that comes because there was a lot of selling in the PC market because people were, and buying obviously with it too, because people were afraid of the incoming RAM and storage price explosions because of the AI boom. So, but Apple is still doing very, very well with iPhones, iPads, Macs, Apple Watch, AirPods. They have not lost as much market share as I thought. So clearly, whatever Apple is doing with their AI pitch, because don't forget, ChatGPT runs on iPhone, Google Gemini runs on iPhone, and you'll get Siri on top of that as a more unique take. Apple is not really losing out, at least not in the eyes of actual consumers. Now, there is more to talk about when it comes to Apple. Now, because I apologize to Riley because I did say this would be an AI-heavy episode. When it comes to AI, Apple also, of course, with the build up to the new LLM based Siri, the new Gemini based Siri, Apple is now really full head on building their own server infrastructure, preparing their new chips. They will be based on the M5 generation, but they will be chiplets. So this is the main reason why M5 Pro and M5 Max did not launch alongside the base M5 MacBook Pro, and that's because these devices will use chiplet-based SoCs. So will Apple servers, while the base M5 is obviously a monolithic die similar to Apple's A series chip because the die is so much smaller. It is still economical to make it monolithic. While the larger you get, it just becomes more economical to build it on chiplets. The yields are better. You might mix and match different nodes to save on cost. Some technologies that don't really scale too well, like memory controllers, you can even use a much older node for it and not really screw anything up, just because those components don't scale as well as logic. And then there are some components that don't really scale well, like cache, but you kind of do want cache to be very close to the logic. So there's plenty to consider. This is coming to Min-Chi Kuo. Apple is he's saying Apple's self-developed AI server chips are expected to enter mass production in the second half of 26, and its own data centers are expected to be in construction and operation in 2027, which may indicate that Apple anticipates significant growth in on-device AI demand starting in 2027. He's saying on-device. So he's not using the term here like we usually do. Whenever we talk about on-device AI, we are talking about AI compute that can actually be handled by an A or M series processor, by which he probably just means that there will be more AI demand coming from iPhones and Macs and stuff like that, and Apple needs the cloud compute to handle it. It's interesting because he says that we're only seeing Apple servers starting in 2027, but we obviously have private cloud compute already. This to me suggests that maybe private cloud compute is not that much designated like as a separate server, but it's just the kind of compute Apple gives you access to online, which I mean, it still will require servers, but it's probably not comparable to the mega data centers that like NVIDIA and AMD are currently helping build. But at least what Min-Chi Kuo is saying that yes, in fact, they will be based on Apple's own server chips. So there's been a lot of speculation that uh, it's very much speculation. There is no real foundation for it. That with the deal with Google, they will use Google's TPU and especially the TPU ecosystem of already like a lot of cloud compute exists from Google in that regard. Here, I would argue that Apple still, for privacy, security reasons, and because we've had reports in the past saying Apple is even considering using the efficiency advantage that they have and their SoC know-how to eventually potentially pitch their servers for third-party use cases, whether it's just maybe apps that already exist on the App Store and they kind of like connect to Siri in a more computationally complex way, or it's services that might be from the ground up built on an Apple foundation model that's a modified Google foundation model that's specifically optimized for Apple's own server and Apple's own hardware. So I know that a lot of the AI stuff gets pretty dry and boring. This is going to be interesting because out of all the stuff, even more so than just putting AI into Apple's software, into Apple's operating system, I think this could be a transformative thing for the company. If Apple gets suddenly a lot of potential customers that use the compute on their servers, Apple might say, you know what, we're going to pivot a lot more of our hardware supply from the consumer space to the server space, just as AMD has done, just as Nvidia has done. I hope that's not going to happen, but it is something we should keep in mind. Obviously, Apple is on a huge roll right now with their own custom silicon. They've designed their first and 1.5 generation of 5G modems. That's C1 and C1X, as seen in the iPhone 16e, iPhone Air, an M5 iPad Pro, and Apple's own Wi-Fi chip with Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 6 and Threads compatibility. We find the N1 in the entire iPhone 17 series, the new iPad, and unfortunately, not the newest Macs. Hopefully, that's something that will change once Apple introduces maybe M5 Pro and M5 Max MacBook Pros. In fact, one cool thing that Apple could do would be to add 320 megahertz support to the Wi-Fi 7 inside the N1, and then they could just call that chip the N1X for the MacBook Pro, because these devices obviously have much larger batteries, much more cooling to work with than an iPhone or an iPad, so they could handle that much faster, potentially a little bit less efficient Wi-Fi. And of course, on top of all that, they're now building server chips. Obviously, server chips are not just complex because they're big and everything, but you need to get the scaling right when it comes to the internal networking. You'll need pretty complex motherboards. You'll need the software stack, like the way that Apple made it possible to connect two Thunderbolt 5 based Macs so they can access each other's compute for AI tasks using MLX. There's a lot of stuff happening, and that's why I really hope that Johnny Cerrugi does not leave Apple anytime soon, because if one part of Apple is absolutely going haywire in the most positive sense of that, it's Apple Silicon. Now, speaking of Apple software, because we've obviously been talking a lot about AI stuff, 26.4 or iOS 27, and we've talked about potentially some fixes to maybe your woes that you might have with 26.1 or even 0.2. Well, there's a second beta of 26.3 that's available to developers. I wouldn't be surprised if it would be released. In fact, I might actually reload the website. No, there's not yet a version for the public beta release, but if you are willing to play with the developer version around, that one has been very, very positive. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is not just to fill that space in the episode. My own iPhone actually has whether it's a hardware or a software issue, but it does have a problem. Similar to many other iPhone 17 Pro users, I do experience crackling sound coming from the bottom speaker whenever I'm charging through USB-C. Now, it does not happen every time. It does not really matter if it's a fast charger or if my device is hot or not. What has mattered mostly for it is that it usually shows only after a certain amount of charge has been already put into the device, usually above 80%. So the device can charge completely silently between 0 and 80, and then it starts to crackle a little bit. It's really not that intrusive, and if you don't put it to your ear, you barely hear it. But obviously, I don't want my $1,800, €1,900 iPhone 17 Pro Max to have any defects. But since installing the second beta, I've charged my iPhone twice. I've charged it overnight, and I've deliberately charged it all day at work. Now, granted, it's connected to a very slow port inside the PC, but it's USB-C, and I believe it's marketed as 20 watts. And I did not get the crackling sound either in the night, because yes, I was awake for most of the night, unfortunately. And not like, sometimes you have good reasons to stay awake at night, sometimes don't. I definitely did not have very positive reasons. I was just doom scrolling because of the Iran revolution stuff and things like that. But I do not yet have crackling on 26.3. That's not to say it's fixed it. And I will go to Apple if they don't acknowledge it by the end of January and get my iPhone replaced. The main reason why I haven't yet done so is because I kind of don't want to get a new iPhone with the same issue, right? And because Apple has not yet acknowledged it, has not said that, oh, maybe it's only the early release iPhones, and if you get one that was made a month later, that one won't have issues. Or maybe it's even just one specific badge, or maybe it's all of them. I would like to have either some confirmation, or at least I just want to know that whatever Apple is doing with software is really not fixing it. I thought for a while that maybe 26.3 beta 1 had already fixed it and my phone was crackling free for about a week, but then it came back. This is why I'm kind of not sure if it's actually a hardware or a software issue. My speculation is that in the redesign, because the speaker is now on the other side, I believe it used to be left, now it's right, or vice versa. And with the new aluminum design and everything, Apple built the USB-C port just a tiny bit too close to the speaker. And a little bit of the static, basically some of the electricity, is moving over from the port to the speaker, and that creates the crackling because it kind of gives the speaker some charge that it shouldn't have. That's why it doesn't play music. It's not actual input, but it is enough electricity to kind of get it confused. It does not sound like coil whine though. Like if your Mac, for example, sometimes makes a sound while charging and stuff like that, that's coil whine. That has to do usually when you transmit a lot of electrical energy, a very strong current. iPhones, iPads usually don't have it at all because their batteries and their power supplies are too small. My initial PlayStation 5 had it a tiny bit. My PS5 Pro had it early on, but then went away. This does sound different from this issue. So I know some people have asked, maybe other devices have it too, or maybe it's a software issue that spans all iOS 26, macOS 26 devices. No, this is very much specific to the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max. And hopefully Apple delivers a software fix, or if not, I'll tell you when I go to Apple, get a new iPhone, and I'll tell you if you should do the same. Now, This is a software-centric episode, and God knows, Apple has a lot of software, and God also knows that I have not been streaming for quite a while. Apple has commented on a lot of their services starting this year, because there are some changes that are happening, some stuff that I actually think are going to be very positive in the long run. Now, let's start one that does not really hit me personally, but one that I think most people are very disappointed to hear about, and that is that Apple is transitioning from Goldman Sachs over to Chase as the new issuer of Apple Card as a credit card. Now, the reason why people are disappointed is because Chase is basically known to have very, very bad rewards in comparison to even other credit card companies, much less to Apple Card, which has some great stuff. Apple is saying that a lot of the stuff is currently being maintained, but the transition is going to happen over 24 months. So we don't yet even know all the details. All we know that Chase is basically buying that Apple Card business from Goldman Sachs, and what kind, like, given that it's a $20 billion purchase, obviously Chase will want to like get that money back, return on investment and all that stuff, baby. We don't know how potentially like stingent they will be in the rewards programs. I assume that whatever will happen, Apple will still focus that you will get especially good rewards on Apple purchases and a somewhat decent unlimited daily cashback. Will it be 3% or might it not be unlimited? We'll have to see. One thing that I hope might happen from this, and unfortunately has not been part of all of this explanation, is that we don't know if Apple has any plans to use Chase now as a launching platform to bring Apple Card to new regions. I know there have been some talks about bringing it potentially to the United Kingdom. At least that was a rumor last year. I definitely am not betting on it coming to me, to Germany. But yeah, this would be the one silver lining that I could see. But then again, Goldman Sachs is also an international company, so they were never really prohibited from using Apple Card, from offering Apple Card outside of the US. They were just probably very worried to do so because Apple Card has been a loss-leading business for them. They have not actually generated profit from it. The main goal of it was to attract customers to you, especially potentially highly affluent customers, like usually the people buying Apple stuff, especially a lot of it, they tend to be more wealthy. But it seemingly didn't work out. I don't know if the $20 or $19 billion that they're getting from Chase are gonna like buy off basically all the loss that they've made or pay off all the losses that they've made. But basically Chase is taking a risk on themselves, and they might not be as generous as Goldman Sachs used to be. So, and from people that I know in the United States, the things I hear is that Chase is seen as very much trash. Not like that their services are like insecure or whatever, but like the rewards are just bad. MasterCard will remain the payment network for Apple Card, at least for now, but Apple probably wouldn't be commenting on it as much if they were unsure of those changes. Yeah, I'll keep you posted on the updates. Obviously, if we actually get some confirmation of a more global expansion, that would be the best thing for me, like especially if it came to Germany. But for now, just keep in mind, if you are an Apple Card user, you will be transitioned from Goldman Sachs Apple Card to a Chase Apple Card at some point. Speaking of Apple services, my transitions in this stream are not really good. I acknowledge that. My segues are not as good as LTTs today. Apple commented on their whole portfolio of services, which obviously includes everything from Apple Pay and iCloud, Apple TV, Apple Music, the trash. That's Apple News. Apple Fitness Plus, which has gotten actually a decent expansion recently. I'll have to give it a shot for once. So, yeah, some Apple services are definitely more of a winner than others. Now, I do not care about the exact money amounts here. Now, obviously, the App Store is huge, generating $500 billion, over $500 billion since its inception for 2008 for developers. So that's 70% of the revenue on that platform. That's not even counting indirect stuff because there are ads on certain apps that have nothing to do with Apple and whatever. And then there are obviously apps like Amazon that don't actually have to share revenue with Apple. Apple Pay, thankfully, has grown fully international at this point, generates more than 100 billion in incremental payments annually. What is cool to me here is that Apple does confirm that services like Apple Podcasts, Apple movies, Apple TV, whatever, which unfortunately is not called Apple TV Plus anymore. They've all reached record highs, including individual pieces on those services reaching new record highs. Like, for example, Pluribus on Apple TV, which I highly, highly recommend, did become their most streamed drama service, drama TV show. So you can argue, oh, Apple is not as big as Disney Plus, or Apple is not as big as Netflix, whatever. But Apple has a big portfolio of services, and they're always looking at improving them and growing them. In fact, and this is now a better transition, they've just announced that, in fact, this month, there will be a huge expansion to some of the software that they offer, and it will become a service of its kind, of its own kind, because it is going to be subscription based. It's now called Apple Creator Studio, and it's, according to Apple, an inspiring collection of the most powerful creative apps, including Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Pixelmator Pro, after Apple acquired Pixelmator recently. There are some very positive changes with Pixelmator Pro that's going to be mentioned here. Motions, Compressor, and Mainstage, those are basically Final Cut helping tools on the Mac. And there will be new AI features and premium content as part of Apple Creator Studio that will be coming to Keynote, Pages, and Numbers. And all of it is a single subscription service, whether you're on iPhone, iPad, or Mac. Specifically more iPad and Mac, because while yes, Keynote, Pages, and Numbers and Freeform are on iPhone, the other apps are mostly iPad and Mac, or even Mac only apps. Like, for example, Motion, Compressor, and Mainstage, they're still Mac exclusive. So with that, Apple has also shown new icons. Let me actually reduce my volume to nothing. Because I just want to see the icons. I love these. These are very liquid glassy, exactly what I want to see. The service is coming soon, so Apple is basically already advertising it. I wish they had an actual explainer video, because the text behind it is quite long. I don't worry, I'm not gonna read out everything. I don't want to make this a 4-hour stream. But there is some interesting stuff here that I definitely want to highlight. So, what is Apple exactly saying about Apple Creator Studio? They're calling it a groundbreaking collection of powerful creative apps. It should be noted none of the apps are actually new. Some of them are new for specific platforms. Mainly Pixelmator Pro is coming to iPad. Previously, it was a Mac exclusive app. And obviously, all of these apps are getting new functionality. And it's a better subscription model than before, where previously you had to buy, for example, Final Cut and Logic on the Mac as an individual purchase for like $200 or $300. But then if you still wanted to use Final Cut and Logic on the iPad, that was then a $5 subscription each on the iPad. Now you still can do those separate purchases, but now you have everything in a much more convenient individual subscription. The apps included with Apple Creators Studio include video editing, music making, making creative images, and what Apple calls visual productivity, even though it's productivity. Like it's keynote pages, numbers, and now free form. They give modern creators the features and capabilities that know, blah, blah, blah. I've already mentioned all the individual apps that are part of it. Final Cut Pro introduces exceptional new video editing tools and intelligence features for Mac and iPad to improve the efficiency of even the most complex workflow. Pixelmator is coming to iPad, optimized for Touch and Apple Pencil. Music creation with Logic Pro for Mac and iPad introduces even more intelligence / AI features like Synth Player and Chord ID, and Keynote Pages numbers freeform get more expressive and productive with new premium content and intelligence features in these apps. So these apps basically turn from free to still mostly free, but also kind of freemium, which is if you want to access their full feature set, you'll pay. How much do you pay? You're paying $12.99 a month. This service will be available starting January 28th, or $129 a month, so roughly an 18% savings per year. And you get a 1 month free trial. And again, it gets you Final Cut, Logic, Pixelmator Pro on Mac and iPad. Motion, Compressor, and Main Stage are Mac exclusive. And Keynote Pages and Numbers and later Freeform are, of course, on iPhone, iPad, and Mac. If you are a college student, I would actually say the prices here are insanely good. They're $2.99 a month or $29.99 per year. I'll try to, like it says educators, but I'll try to look if maybe my workplace offers something like this. Would definitely be cool to save 4 times the money. Alternatively, users can also choose to purchase the Mac versions of Final Cut Pro, Pixelmator Pro, Logic Pro, Motion Compressor, and Main Stage individually as a one-time purchase on the Mac App Store. That's number 5. You see, this is a rather long write down. Yeah, it's $300 for Final Cut. It's $200 for Logic. It's $50 for Pixelmator Pro and Motion and Compressor. And then Main Stage is $29.99. So Eddie Q, obviously Apple Senior Vice President of Internet Software and Services, is singing its praises. This is very much a standard kind of like PR statement. I don't need to read you this. Now, when it comes to the changes actually happening to all the individual apps, now, as I've outlined before, they all have sexy new liquid glass-based icons. But beyond that, Final Cut Pro for Mac and iPad empowers content creators. There's a one-time purchase. It's optimized for Apple Silicon devices. There is transcript search coming to Mac and iPad. You can now easily find the perfect soundbite and hours of footage by simply typing phrases into the search bar to see exact or related results. Video, podcast, and interview can be assembled quickly, eliminating extensive time spent skimming through footage. So basically, this is a transcription feature, and instead of just having transcript, you now have transcript search, which makes sense. Looking for a specific video clip also gets an intelligence assistant with visual search. Now that one I'm actually really excited for. I don't do that much video editing, but usually my projects are pretty small, just private stuff for the family. But knowing that I can specifically look for something that I know is in the project and just tell it, find me the cat in there or something like that, that's pretty helpful. So you can now do visual or transcript search. You can now also edit your videos better to the rhythm of music with beat detection that also uses an AI model. This one is based on something that they've already built for Logic Pro. It analyzes the music track, displays the beat grid, and therefore allows you to just put your video right where that like a certain part of the music and the beat will be. So you can see here was like climbing stairs. So this is an example of visual search. And here you ask for something that this person was basically explaining in the video. So you just typed in history of racing because you know this is a phrase that this person uttered. I wonder if there will be like AI-based analysis on the text. So if maybe that person never mentioned history of racing, but in all essence, they are talking about the history of racing. If that will work well as a search, that will be interesting. And yeah, you can see here how you can analyze to the beat of music. There's a new montage maker in Final Cut for iPad. So interesting, that seems to be an exclusive feature for iPad. So Apple is delineating between the two versions. It lets users kickstart their edit in just settings using the power of AI. You see, Apple really wants to make sure that you understand they're not losing the AI race. They're just treating it very differently. Montage Maker will analyze and edit together a dynamic video based on the best visual moments within the footage. I assume this is very much based for social media. That's why it has reframing for horizontal videos, to vertical with auto crop. So this is basically you shot a video, now you very quickly pushed it from your iPhone to your iPad. Maybe you don't want to work with like TikTok's editing app and whatever. And you can push it to social media very quickly by just having this montage maker tool. Oh, sorry, not push it to your Mac, push it to your iPad. Apple Creator Studio also unlocks full access to motion. Yeah, that creates 2D and 3D effects. It has features like magnetic mask. As far as I know, there's nothing new that's being specifically optimized, and these apps are also not coming to iPad, which I know some people had hoped they would. Logic Pro is getting new features across iPad and Mac, and of course, as is the case for everything in this subscription service, you don't have to buy the Mac version once fully and subscribe on the iPad separately. It's all in one subscription service. There is Synth Player that it joins the AI Session Player lineup that's already been included in the last Logic Pro update, and this one specifically is focused on electronic music performance with a diverse range of chordal and synth bass parts. Again, I'm not sure if I said it before, but I'm not the biggest, I play a little bit of electric guitar, very basic classic rock. So I'm not your biggest expert on music. I know some people love Logic Pro. Some people especially swear by it because of how powerful it is on the Mac, how optimized it is for Apple Silicon, how many tracks it can handle, how it can handle live performances with basically no latency without any special tools, even if you just use a single MacBook Air. But obviously, if there's stuff missing for you, or you might be more excited for the individual new features because you know that stuff better and you know that they will improve your workflow, that's not something that, I know more about video editing than I do about audio editing, just to make sure you guys know where I'm at. And I don't even know that much about video editing. That's why I'm a live streamer. That's lazier. But though I would like to try out that montage maker feature, just put in my entire stream in it, and then say find the most exciting parts from my analysis of MKBHD's video about the Gemini Siri deal. That will be cool. So Synth Player is developed in-house using Apple's own team of expert sound designers, but then obviously also augmented with Apple's AI. And like every AI session player, creators can direct Synth Player using intuitive controls for complexity intensity, while additional parameters unlock access to advanced performance capabilities. And it can access any third-party plugin, which I know is very important for a lot of pros. That so much I definitely do know. And there's Court ID. which I honestly didn't understand too much while I read it the first time. So let's read it together. It becomes a personal music theory expert by turning any audio or MIDI recording into a ready-to-use chord progression, eliminating tedious manual transcriptions and bringing demo ideas to life even faster. I think, what? Analyze chords. Wait, will it just give you like a musical chord like analysis, like not just volume and everything? Will it just write it as it would be written, like for an orchestra to play or for a band, of course? So you don't have to write it down. Is that what's happening here? Um, Designed to help everyone get the most out of session play experience, Chord ID can analyze complex harmonic content from nearly any recording to automatically populate the chord track in Logic Pro. Is that the... Oh, that's the chord track. And yeah, it has like G... yeah, G major. Yeah. Okay, so I did kind of understand it, but I am shit at reading chords, so it wouldn't help me much. And since the chord tracks drives the performance of any AI session player, users can quickly audition different player styles and genres. So you can basically ask session player to like join you with a drum beat, and because it has the chord ID, it's not just completely based on harmonics. It's gonna match your style much more precise, and it will write down its own chords. That way you can kind of match and know that, like, oh, maybe, and you can even edit, I assume, at that point on an individual chord basis. At least that's how I take this feature. Again, take everything I say with a little bit of salt. The new sound library, now that's a feature I understand because everything is right in the name. In Logic Pro for Mac, so this is apparently now a Mac specific feature. Apple still wants you to buy iPads and Macs. Also, by the way, really funny that Apple does have like these screenshots with full screen, and the funny thing is that they do have this corner issue. Apple, you can do better. Also, give us an option in 26 in 0.3 or 4, whatever, to customize that. If I'm in a scenario like this, I want it to be corner to corner. I don't need curved corner radiuses or stuff like that. A sound library for Mac delivers Apple-designed packs and producer packs with hundreds of royalty-free. Now, they better be royalty-free, of course, because you are already paying for this subscription. But yes, if you have Logic Pro, you get royalty-free loops, samples, instrument patches, drum sounds, and more. This is really cool because I know a lot of people have been using AI for a lot of this stuff, which, again, this tool also obviously has AI. But the fact that there is stuff that comes directly from Apple, that apparently comes from other producers, is really cool because AI by itself still steals a lot. Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever. And I'm grateful that there is a very convenient way to access something like that. Obviously, there are a lot of royalty-free websites, whether it comes to images or videos or audio tracks that you can use. Obviously, I as a YouTuber know that, even though I as a live streamer never take that much advantage of it, but it's cool that it's directly integrated. Additionally, Logic Pro for iPad users will now have access to the industry-leading quick swipe comping feature from Logic Pro for Mac, an indispensable tool for vocalists and producers who want to create seamless performances inside or outside the studio. So this is a feature I'm not familiar with, but it's basically bringing the iPad version more into parity with Mac. Logic Pro for iPad also presents music understanding features with natural language search in the soundbar, so that's similar to the visual search or the transcript search that we have talked about with Final Cut Pro. You don't need tags, guesses, or filters. Obviously, if it's just very good, though I'm not sure what I would exactly be typing into that. And Apple says it's based on AI-based awareness of the massive collection of loops in Logic Pro, and that makes it easy to search either through natural language or recording to find a similar or a complementary loop or sound. So this one will very much depend on the quality of the AI. And with all of these AI features, my question is, are all of these AI features running completely locally? I would assume they do. Is there any kind of cutoff for which generation of Apple Silicon they support or not? Are they noticeably slower on like an M1 device versus like an M4, M5 device? That's definitely something that I would like to see people test who actually use that stuff. And then obviously main stage. That's similar to like motion. It's basically like an accessory similar to a motion and compressor are like accessories to Final Cut. Main stage is an accessory to Logic Pro, basically. Good to have it here. It remains Mac exclusive, unfortunately, but one thing that stops being Mac exclusive, and it does actually return us to the good old days where Apple used to make an app called Aperture. Because yes, guys, if you remember way back in the day, Apple did not just have Final Cut and Logic, but Apple also had Aperture, a photo editing app. And now they have one again, because after acquiring the Pixelmator guys, they are now porting Pixelmator Pro, which was previously Mac exclusive, to the iPad. It brings an all-new touch-optimized experience, full Apple Pencil support, the ability to work between iPad and Mac. So I really hope that this is just functionality wise the exact same app, just with a different UI between iPad and Mac. And all of the powerful editing tools users have come to appreciate on Mac. Obviously it's Apple Silicon optimized and all that jazz. You can see it has very much a liquid glass based design, which I dig absolutely. This looks fucking gorgeous. I know there were some people will complain about readability or whatever. It might probably work a little bit poorly if you have your purely like white image underneath. Though there is a masking effect for text for that to compensate. But yeah, this looks absolutely dope, especially with an image like this in the background. And that definitely adds value to it because you get all those Mac apps. And now if you are somebody who wants to work on iPad, like to me, iPad has always been my favorite Apple product. It just feels the best, just this magical big piece of glass. And the idea that, like, sure, there are some things that I know iPadOS still prohibits me from doing, but if I just want to keep editing a photo that I might have started on the Mac and Pixelmator Pro, in fact, that's one of the reasons why I never purchased Pixelmator Pro on the Mac, because it does not have that feature, because it's not cross-compatible with iPad, or at least it wasn't. Now it is, and you bet your ass I'm getting that subscription. Intuitive touch controls make it easier to create desktop class designs. The full-featured layer sidebar allows creators to build design using a range of unique elements like images, shapes, text, and even video. Obviously, all of that is very simple. Smart selection tools helps users isolate and edit specific parts of images effortlessly. And with advanced bitmap and vector masks, bitmap and vector masks. Okay, users can hide or reveal discrete portions of their designs. Yeah, makes sense. The deep integration of hardware, software, and Apple Silicon unlocks features like super resolution. Makes sense. That's a feature that has been in a lot of these kinds of pro image apps for a while. This is very much the fact that Apple talks about it being Apple Silicon optimized does suggest that they're optimizing all of these AI features very much for on-device compute, which is very cool and very Apple-y. And my question is, given the Google Gemini deal we've discussed in the beginning of the stream, or for the first hour of the stream, my question is, will Apple use some of Google's know-how to eventually improve some of the foundation models powering these AI features? Transcript and transcript search, visual search, court ID, super resolution, a lot of interesting stuff. Plus, I would love to see benchmarks in how it performs differently from like M1 class devices to M5 class devices. A lot of great opportunities for nerds, even who don't use these kinds of apps that much. A lot of data that we'll be gathering. Full support for Apple Pencil, all makes sense. Also supports Apple Pencil features like hover, squeeze, and double tap, which obviously means it needs, for some of it, the latest Apple Pencil. All makes sense. Additionally, for Apple Creator Studio subscribers, both Pixelmator for Mac and iPad bring a powerful new warp tool for twisting and shaping layers any way creatives can imagine, alongside a beautiful collection of warp-powered product mockups. That's cool. Is there an image of that? That's Apple Pencil features. No. And then visual productivity, which is apparently Apple's name for what used to be iWork, which is Keynote Pages and Numbers, and Freeform, which they have brought relatively recently, which is more of like a brainstorming app, right? I mean, that's kind of the best way to explain it. With Apple Creator Studio, productivity gets supercharged with all new features that bring more intelligence and premium content to creators' fingertips so they can take their projects to the next level. So the apps themselves stay free, extra functionality behind the paywall of this subscription. There's a content hub that's a space for where users can find curated, high quality photos, graphics, and illustrations. That's also something that I appreciate. It definitely gives artists an extra way to give, like obviously not every artists that partner with Apple, but to give content to Apple so people don't have to necessarily use AI. I'm not sure what this sign means. I really hope it doesn't mean it's AI generated. I mean, it could be. That one I wouldn't like. I want AI features, but I don't want AI content that's like shipped by default. In addition to Image Playground, advanced image creation and editing tools let users create high-quality images from text or transform existing images using generative models from OpenAI. So, yeah, that also makes sense. Is this an Image Playground image? Because this looks a little bit too nice to be Image Playground. Now, that one underneath definitely is way too nice to be Image Playground, but I wonder if this is. On-device AI models enable super resolution to upscale images, so that's something that we've already discussed with Pixelmator Pro, auto crop, so some features that are basically cross-compatible between other Pro apps and now Pages, Keynote, and Numbers. Apple Creator Studio includes access to features in beta for Keynote, such as the ability to generate a first draft of a presentation from a text outline or create presenter notes from existing slides. This one is going to be interesting. I'm not going to say this is great or bad because obviously we know a lot of slop could come out of this. This will very much depend on like Apple's quality of models behind it and stuff like that. Subscribers can also quickly clean up slides to fix layout and object placement. I really hope it's completely integrated into the app and lets me then re-edit that. Like, let's say it gets it 90% right. I want the slider to get it to 100% without extra prompts. And the numbers, subscribers can generate formulas and fill in tables based on pattern recognition with Magic Fill. Okay. Yeah, these apps remain free, but they are getting all this premium content behind the paywall. Again, pricing is $12.99 per month or $130 a year, or $3 per month or $29.99 per year if you're a college student or educator. Interestingly, they do not say this for school students, just for college students. But yeah, the details here are going to be interesting. Apple Creator Studio is available to download on the App Store as a universal purchase. Oh, so that's interesting. And it is shareable through family sharing, which is actually a really great deal. If you know, like the bundle pricing for like Adobe Suite and stuff like that, for it to be accessible to many people, that's a lot more money. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've been really excited about this. I know some people do not like the pivot to subscription models for Apple in general, but this is where the industry has moved for a while, whether it's movies and TV shows or music. And of course, like Adobe Premiere or the entire Adobe suite runs on a subscription model. Microsoft Office runs on a subscription model. You haven't been able to even buy the full versions of the apps for years and years. But with Apple, at least you can still do that, at least on the Mac. So plus, of course, apps like Pages, Keynote, and Numbers, they remain free with the non-premium content, which is still most of what you will use Keynote, Pages, Numbers, and Freeform for. So at least these apps, they're not being downgraded. They are getting a redesign based on Liquid Glass. So if you're wondering where are those apps, they definitely could stand to get a Liquid Glass redesign. Well, that's happening on January 28th. And as part of the Apple Creator Studio upgrade, but obviously you do not need to get Apple Creator Studio to just get the latest version of these apps and the Liquid Glass design with it. Now, we've talked a lot about software, and before I transition to my last topic, I'll just gonna see if I've missed anything. Quo says Apple's deal with Google is temporary, buys the time. Pretty much acknowledge that. Does he point out how long the timeline is, though? Queries have advanced. Quo describes Apple's as a way to ease short-term pressure rather than a long-term strategic shift. I've already outlined all of that. He said on-device AI is unlikely to drive hardware sales in the near term, but the partner, it also means that, like, unfortunately, on-device AI is also hitting some other bottlenecks. Like, the amount of memory that you can source right now is pretty limited and very expensive. So Apple is not giving us 16 gigabytes of on-device RAM on iPhones next year. Maybe if RAM prices remain that crazy, not even in 2028. So even if on-device AI were to drive people's engagement and purchases, it still would be limited by the actual on-device capabilities. But speaking of on-device capabilities, you know which devices are going to have a lot of on-device capabilities? You guessed it, M5 Pro and M5 Max MacBook Pros. And even the new Studio display, if the rumors are true that it's going to be powered by an A19 processor. Now, this is the last story because this is the story that has the least foundation. Now, obviously, we know from people like Mark Gurman that we are very close to M5 Pro and M5 Max MacBook Pros, very close to a potential Studio display. Now, very close could still mean a couple of months, like until like a mid-spring release, March or something like that. But who knows? It could also be a surprise January or February reveal. God knows, we didn't really expect the iPhone 16e to drop spontaneously in February. So obviously, why am I showing you M4 Pro and M4 Max devices for this? Well, the answer to that is this. And the shipment date for many of the configuration is now slipping to 2 to 3 weeks. In fact, when we're going to get to the Studio display, it's actually going to get worse than that. Now, this is something that thankfully has come to my attention thanks to the amazing guys in my Discord. So thank you very much for that. And obviously, it does build on all the leaks and rumors that we've gotten before about soon-to-be-released new Macs and monitors from Apple. But yes, obviously, if you go to the base version, DM5, you see that one is in stock and ships right away, no matter if it's how much storage or RAM you give it. Now, the M4 Pro, the smaller one on the 14-inch version, it does show in stock for the base configurations, but then the 14-inch version with the M4 Max actually does not even have 2 to 3 weeks of waiting time, but 3 to 4 weeks. And that is very unusual. Like, sometimes a component will have 1 to 2 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks is a little bit of an outlier. 3 to 4 weeks is usually something we see right before a refresh. That way, Apple can basically upgrade you to a new device while you're still waiting for the shipment, or they're just cancel your fucking order, right? This is very, very interesting, and it's obviously it's true for this version of the 14-inch and for a lot of the versions of the 16-inch. You can see that the Max version is a little bit more easily available for the 16-inch. And what drives this story even more home for me is the fact that the studio display is having the same issues. Now, not all configurations, though some of them are crazy. So this is the cheapest Apple Studio display. That's standard glass. That's just the stand with tilt adjust functionality, no height adjustment, because that one is worth $400. This is one of the more insane things that Apple does. It's just in line with the Pro Display XDR stand. It's in line with the Mac Pro $700 wheels. Like, I would even argue this is a worse value than the Pro Display XDR stand. Now, that one is expensive at $1,000 by itself, but it's $1,000 for a $5,000 monitor. And it's very unique, whatever, right? Here you already have a fully aluminum stand that's already tilt adjustable for no extra charge. And then you add 25% of that cost for just height adjustment. That's crazy to me. But yes, if you want that cheapest version, you'll have to wait 3 to 4 weeks. Now with the tilt and height adjustable stand, it's still 3 to 4 weeks. I think that's actually worse than the last time I looked it up. With the Visa mount adapter, it's also still 3 to 4 weeks. So it's all standard glass configurations. And when you look at nano textured glass, it's 3 to 4. Yeah, that's definitely worse than it was before. Yeah. Oh, wow. They've all slipped by at least a week since I last looked it up. Some of them were 2 to 3 weeks. Now, I knew some configurations were 3 to 4 weeks, but this is actually crazy situation. Yeah, now I'm even more convinced that at least the studio display is definitely getting an upgrade by some time this month or next month. Like the fact that, wait, is there 0 configurations then that have less than 3 to 4 weeks of wait? Because that was definitely, one version even was instantly available last time I looked. So none of the nano texture glass version, and seemingly no versions of the standard glass either. So yeah, combine that with some of the waiting time on the MacBook Pro, like the 14-inch M4 Max version, making you wait 3 to 4 weeks. Honestly, that's to me very much proof. Now, it does not tell me how long we'll actually have to wait, if it will actually happen in the next 3 to 4 weeks, or even less, right? I mean, this month only has 2 weeks left, roughly. But this is fascinating, and I really wanted to let you know, because this is obviously not rumors in the traditional sense. This is speculation, but I just wanted to show you this because this is speculation based on something solid. Like, we have a proven track record of when devices start slipping in their delivery date. That means either these devices are not popular, or maybe there are some logistics issues. Sometimes that happens with like the original HomePod, right? But then most of the time, it usually means that we're very close to a refresh, and Apple wants to prevent people from buying a product a week before the new one launches and basically get screwed. Now, they still want to sell out of stock, so they will still give you some configurations. But for some things, it just means that Apple just doesn't want to produce, for example, more 14-inch versions with an M4 Max, because they sold as many of those configurations as they could. And for everything else, wait for the new generation and see how many Apple makes of those. That's at least the take I'm getting from here. I'm very fascinated by what exact performance level Apple is going to target with the M5 Pro and Max MacBook Pros. It's going to be interesting to see if the Mac Studio launches with the MacBooks or right after. There is some rumors that that one is more of a mid-year release rather than an early year release like the MacBooks. And with the studio display, obviously the main rumor is that we're getting some form of HDR and some form of ProMotion with it. which actually would make it really good value at $1,600. uh, Especially as it is 5K, which is still a relatively unique feature. We are getting some of those with CES this year, but unfortunately not as many as I would like. Also, they're seemingly more gaming focused. But yeah, if Apple can give this promotion and real HDR, maybe not as good as in the Pro Display XDR in a way, even though that one only has 576 display dimming zones, so 4 times less than even my 14-inch MacBook Pro. So we are definitely overdue for an upgrade. And yeah, like nano texture glass, maybe you need that depending on your use case, though most people don't. $300 is a little bit steep. I think at $200 it would be a little bit more of an easy purchase. And yeah, that stand, like if you can live with your monitor not looking the same as your stand, get the Visa mount adapter and get your own freaking stand. And if you think you don't need height adjustability, which I doubt you don't need it, I think most people do, just get the tilt adjustable stand. Or hopefully Apple actually is generous enough to give us tilt and height adjustability by default with the refresh. But we'll have to see. So we checked out Mac rumors already for any kind of news stories. Apple guru, blah blah blah. Whenever I see like growth predictions, that's always cringe to me. Yeah, seemingly nothing new on 9 to 5 Mac either. As I said, I'll keep an eye out on the quality of 26.3 beta 2 and what it means, for example, for my iPhone 17 Pro Max and its static speaker noise issue. If you have something like that yourself, let me know. But beyond all that, we are now getting close to an end. So it's my last shout out for you to do what we call the YouTube jazz. I know I haven't been online for a while, but I still got it in me, which is please subscribe, share the video with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Comment, don't just comment live. Also comment, please, in the regular comment section. It helps tremendously with the algorithm. And of course, if you want to support this channel directly, you can become a YouTube member right here. Shout out to Angelica, Steve, Max, and Jonathan, our MarkTech Pro Max supporters. And you can also support us over on Patreon. And of course, whenever you catch me live, you can send a super chat or a super sticker, just as a small sign of appreciation. It's all very, very much appreciated. Beyond all that, let me know what else you would like to see me cover. Definitely please hit the notification bell. That way you actually know when I'm getting online. For Riley, you'll get actually some big mark action at the end of the stream. Hopefully that satisfies your cravings. I am overdue for a shave. Okay, good that I caught that. Yeah, let me know what you would like to see me cover next. Let me know how I could improve your viewing experience. Let me know what time you want to see me stream. Usually I stream from about 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. German time. It could be moved by about an hour later if that really helps for people coming from countries like the United Kingdom or the United States. Definitely trying to grow that audience. Yeah, so plenty of stuff. Just let me know. And of course, join my Discord. Plenty of great guys and gals there. Just so you know, like sharing news, rumors, their own takes, their own experience with their hardware. Some of them work on software. We have the main developer from Geekbench, Jeff Poole, over there, giving some great takes, sometimes sharing fantastic data. Thank you so much to him for joining my small, meaningless discourse, but I hope it's fun for him and others. I thank you all so much. Hopefully you'll see more of me in this new year, and hopefully I'll read more of you. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time. This is MarkTech, tuning out.